What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by comic creator Jon Dexter. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. This is the first time we've done an interview together, so that's having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk. You're in the midst of a Kickstarter with Alpha Dogs, and we're gonna hop into that in just a second here. But I gotta ask, have you always had a love for comics? Did you, or was this kind of a newer thing for you?
I was like most teens from the 90s that was exposed to X-Men cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I became enthralled when I never heard of the X-Men before. I was kind of into Spider-Man, as like most kids were, and then kind of got away from it. And then when the X-Men cartoon came out, and I think it was 93, I was just enthralled like everybody else. And even though I was in high school, I was all talking to my friends about it because it was so adult and it had such adult themes. And it wasn't some laughy thing like most comics, like Spider-Man and Friends. It was just so intriguing. And so I was hooked ever since. I was using my paper route money to buy back issues of X-Men, anything that had Wolverine and Sabretooth. I was all in.
Nice. So Wolverine and Sabretooth were your dudes back in the day. Are they still guy? Okay.
Yeah, I was a huge fan. I was actually the first X-Men episode I saw was something like Cold Heart or something like it's like the third or fourth issue when Wolverine escapes to Alaska. And I don't know if you remember the episode, but
I remember a lot of the series, and I mean, I can hear the title package right now in my head just going, oh man.
Yeah, it's great. It's
so good. Yeah, it definitely was smart, and it was, like you said, it was very adult for that age. And and that was what's interesting about that time period, right? Because that was right around the same time Batman the Animated Series. And I think both of those were along that kind of darker tone for kids, but
it was serious themes. Yeah, I mean, now that you think about it, it's kind of like what was it, 86 when Watchmen and Dark Knight came out. It was sort of like that. It was a real groundbreaking year for comic book TV shows. It really changed the whole landscape of cartoons. Everything kind of became more adult after that for a while, until the Power Rangers came and destroyed all the Marvel.
So I gotta ask then. So how you got hooked into it because of the show? You found this love for comics and stuff, and started picking up back issues and stuff. You said, where was this transition to say, okay, I love comics, now I want to create comics?
So ever since I was 15 years old, I wanted to be a writer, a screenwriter, and I had been working on that for most of my life. And I had a little bit of success. Nothing, I didn't sell anything, but I had the Academy Awards people, they put on a screenplay contest that if you win, you have a really good shot of getting your script produced. And there's been a lot of movies that have been made from the screenwriting contest that the Academy Award puts on. And my script, it's called The Weeping Trees, historical fiction, got to the semifinals. So it was in the top 180 out of 7,400 people 2 years in a row. So it garnered some interest, and I worked on that for quite a bit, and it fell through. And then I come up with Alpha Dogs, and I decided that I wanted to create it it works so much better as a comic book anyway, that I decided to create that as a comic book. I had done a comic book a few years before that was Flaming Turd. It went down in flames pretty quickly. They're still in quarter bins at my LCS, so I'm sure. But I was learning, like anything else, you learn from your mistakes. And so I went with Alpha Dogs, and I put all my money into it and was kind of paying as I go. It took me a year to produce it because, as anybody will tell you, producing a comic book was expensive. And I sent the first 6 pages to Image, and then that was about time that COVID hit and everything shut down.
Yep.
So luckily for many of us comic book creators, Kickstarter was around. And so I took it to Kickstarter, and I got issue 1 funded. And then issue 2 funded, and now issue 3 is out. And so far, I launched it last night. So at about this time, 12 hours ago, and I'm 50% funded right now.
That's awesome.
So I'm getting there.
That's awesome. Well, so you've gotten into the world of comics, and Alpha Dog was kind of like your it sounds like your main foray into it, after, you messed around with another one that you said wasn't a huge success. So let's talk Alpha Dogs then. What's Alpha Dogs about? What's the elevator pitch for it?
Yeah, so we lived in Missouri for a while, my wife and kids, and we have a pit bull mix. Well, in the town we lived in, they were going to outlaw pit bulls. So we had the choice to move or get rid of our dog. And of course, we're not getting rid of our dog, they're part of your family. So we moved, and that was kind of the genesis of creating the main character, Buck. And if you go to the Kickstarter, you can see a picture of me with my dog. And so his look is similar to Buck's. He's a white dog. And so that was the creation of Buck, this big pit bull, this overgrown sized pit bull that's got a great heart and that will do whatever is necessary to protect the people he loves. Now we pick up on the story with Buck living with his owner Ina and this older pit bull named Cyrus. And they've been on the run from this group of mercenaries named BlackRock for all of Buck's life, because Buck, just like Cyrus, has these incredible powers. They can heal from most any wound. They're intelligent enough to understand human speak, and they have a slightly heightened strength. So this group of mercenaries know of this and have been chasing them for many years. And then finally, they think they are safe in this farmhouse in South Carolina. And then one day, their owner, Ina, brings home her new boyfriend, who works with her at the bioengineering company named NextGen. And she, for the first time ever, divulges this dog's secret, something she's never done, but she's lived an incredibly lonely life protecting these dogs. And he kind of manipulates her, sweeps her off her feet. But when she divulges the dog's abilities, little does she know is he already knows of the dog's powers. And once in possession of the dog's blood, he can create his own superpower dogs. And Buck, of course, is very wary of the guy, and he attacks him, bites off a few of his fingers, and that's kind of the beginning of the hatred between our protagonist Buck and Salem, the evil person of the series. So, and when issue 2 comes along, he's able to successfully use the serum on his own dog, who becomes this big hulking dog who is as the series goes along, him and Buck have a run in. So it's a really exciting series. It doesn't get bogged down with a lot of talking heads exposition. I like to keep the story moving along, and people that have read 1 and 2 have enjoyed it quite a bit. And it's done pretty decent at my local comic stores around the area. So I hopefully will be able to get issue 3 funded and keep going with it.
Yeah.
It's a series that if you love dogs, if you love mystery, if you love adventure stories, then you're going to really enjoy Alpha Dogs. It's very adult themed, even though it's talking dogs. It's not your hokey stuff. It's got very real underlying issues with the series.
Yeah. Well, it's and I got to read issue 1, and you jump right into the mix. Like there's no like gentle leeway, and you're just like, oh, what's going on? Like, oh, hey, okay, let's go.
Yeah. You find we begin with him seemingly dead, washed up on shore of a beach, and so we start out with this mystery, and then we see his abilities kick in. I can't stand comics, and you see this a lot with with Kickstarter comic book people is they think they got to tell the whole story in the first few pages, and the story should come to the as we go. So I like to do that, and I've read comics, like I said, for most of my life. So
yeah. So you have this idea for Alpha Dogs, and obviously your love for your dog and played a huge part. But where did this idea of like dogs with some super abilities come into play?
So a good friend of mine, and he called me up and said, I got a great idea for you for your next comic. You should write a comic book about dogs with superpowers. And I thought, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And I just thought it was idiotic, but it just started to percolate and slowly and I thought of my own dog and the issues we had with him. And then it just really kind of flowed really quickly. Plus he had a lot of money, and I thought, well, he'll fund my comic book if I write it. but to him, it was just a passing fancy, just something off the cuff, and that was the end of it. But I wrote the first 6 issues. I was originally doing it kind of like a Lost, where we have this main story and then we find out the backstories of our dogs. But then, it's been 6 years in the making for Alpha Dog. So it's matured, and what you get is going to be a very well thought and well paced story, because like I said, it's been 6 years of me working on it to get it how I want it.
Yeah. So you're right now in the midst of kickstarting issue number 3. Is this a world that, like, is there an end point for you right now, or is this kind of like, I'm gonna take it where as long as I can or as much as I can? Like, how deep do you want to go into the world of Alpha Dogs?
Well, right now in my mind, I got 50 issues in me. That's pretty much how I got 5 volumes, and the story is told a la kind of like I said, like The Lost, like Game of Thrones, where you've got this big mystery, this big storyline, and that's how the dogs got their powers. Yeah. And we go along in the history of the dogs and how things came to be, plays out as the story goes. But then we got our kind of smaller storyline of Buck in Salem, Ina's former boyfriend, and he has this revenge plot. So he wants to create more dogs with powers so he can enact his revenge story, which as we go, we kind of slowly find out. So there's a lot of mystery to it, a lot of adventure, and everything kind of ties in. I love stories that go one way, go another, and then they kind of slowly, you start seeing them tie into each other, kind of like I said, like Lost, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad. That's kind of how the method to the madness of Alpha Dogs.
You said Lost, and I'm just like, I'm here for it. Let's go. Like, that was my jam. So
yeah, Lost was great. I was watching Lost when I was staying in Georgia, staying in a little camper with a friend of mine, and they were watching all the stories of Lost, and that's when he had said something about writing a comic about dogs with superpowers. So it kind of was kismet. It kind of just came together, and it turned out to be, like I said, I have all the issues somewhat in my head. I've already written the first volume, which is 9 issues. So I know where this is going, and people are going to be a lot of surprises along the way, and a lot of cool storylines. There's definitely, it's something that will keep your interest. Like I said, if you read issue 1 and you liked it, you're going to really enjoy as we go along.
So how did you get the creative team together then for this book? You had this idea, obviously, to write Alpha Dog. And you got some talented artists and colorists and team on it. So how did the team for Alpha Dogs come about?
So like I said, you learn from your mistakes. I went cheap when I did my first comic book called Steelhawk, which you've never heard of and no one probably ever will. So I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go do the best, find the best people I can, and just pay as I go, because it's, you only got one chance at this. You learn from your mistakes. So I did a cold call on Facebook looking for artists, and they answered the call, and I went through, it was probably about 50 people, 50 artists I looked through, and I said, they were perfect. They're called Stone Tower Studio, and they're all encompassing. They do the illustrations, the color, they did the trailer, they do the lettering. They did a lot of work on the Kickstarter graphics. I mean, pretty much all of the work on the Kickstarter graphics. So they're out of Argentina, but they're great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, as you can see from Buck poster right there, I mean, art is just as good as anything you've seen in Marvel.
Yeah. Oh, it's talented for sure.
Yeah, do the best I possibly can, because like I said, you want to keep people coming back.
Right.
So.
All right. So let's talk about your Kickstarter then. It's live right now. You've got a dope trailer up there that people can see. And we're actually, maybe put it in here so people can check it out on this interview here. But every Kickstarter, we know people back on my shows and stuff before, there's tiers and there's special rewards and stuff. What's something you really, or a couple of things that you really like about your Kickstarter for Alpha Dogs 3?
So I got a huge get with this. I did a cold message to Trish Forstner, the artist and co-creator of Stray Dogs. And I said, would you be willing to do sketch covers for Alpha Dogs? And she agreed. So I was head over heels, bowled over, because, like I said, I didn't think she was going to do it, but, it never hurts to ask. So all the study can say is no. So she agreed to do it. She did sketch covers for issue 2, and she's doing sketch covers for issue 3 as well. Every one of them original. They look great. I bought one myself for issue 2, and I'm gonna do one for issue 3 as well. So that was a big get for me. Just her name alone carries a lot of cachet. So. Yep. And another cool tier is a cartoon drawing of your pet. So no matter if it's an iguana, dog, llama, we have an artist at Stone Tower Studios that will do a drawing of your pet. Cartoon, he colors it. It's all hand drawn, and it looks absolutely fantastic. I did for issue 1, issue 2, and I've had people coming back. This one individual said that he liked it so much for issue 2, he's going to have his wife and daughter are going to back it just to get drawings of their own pets. So it's top notch. You can see some of them on the Kickstarter page. They're small, but if anybody has any, concerns, they can message me and I can send them some of the drawings from the other dogs that have been done on here. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, those are always cool. I love to get yourself drawn into a comic or, draw a pet. Like I've seen those tiers. I've backed some of those tiers before.
Yeah.
But getting Trish, that's such a cool get. I was at Baltimore Comic-Con last year and her line was wrapped around people getting sketches and nonstop. So, cause Stray Dogs.
And she's very nice, very humbling. She actually is the one that put me over for my funding for issue 2, which is really, she didn't need to do that. And so that was really cool of her.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's always cool to hear. Just like, that's a beautiful thing about the comic community. There really is a lot of love for, each other's work and to support each other. And so that's neat to hear for sure. Is this, so I know you're working on Alpha Dogs. You have this massive world, and I hesitate to even ask, like, is there other things that you are working on outside of Alpha Dogs, or is this your main bread and butter right now?
So I just, because I'm glutton for punishment, I just recently, a few weeks ago, ended my Kickstarter for another comic I did called Dinosaur Detective. It's a noir, supernatural noir, detective mystery. That's over with. That was funded, which was tough because the economy being the way it is, there's been a huge decrease for a lot of us comic book creators on a Kickstarter, but I was able to get it funded, which is cool. It's an 8-issue series, and I think he's got 4 pages left to illustrate for Dinosaur Detective, and it's a really, if you love True Detective and Stephen King's It, think of those with a really dark issue episode of Dukes of Hazzard. Roll those together, and you'll have Dinosaur Detective.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, it's a fantastic. It's just as good as Alpha Dogs. It's just a totally different genre, but it's a story I had in my head for a few years, and then I listened to a podcast about Dixie Mafia, who back in the 60s, they actually still exist today, just not anywhere near what they were. But if you ever watched the movie Walking Tall, so those were the people that attacked Buford T. Puster. They ran the drugs, the gambling. Anyway, so the story is about this family of moonshiners that crosses the Dixie Mafia, and it's kind of this all-out war. This takes place in 1981, and not to give too much away, but there's this evil entity connected to it all. And 30 years later, this detective who was a boy of the family of the moonshiners investigates this murder from the serial killer, and they ended up, it's connected to his family's war with the Dixie Mafia, and there's this evil entity connected to it all. So issue 2 will be coming out. I don't know, whatever issue 1 gets done being illustrated. But if you missed issue 1 of Dinosaur Detective, it's an add-on for Alpha Dogs. So
nice.
We can read about it. Yes. So there's a little blurb you can read about Dinosaur Detective when you go to the Kickstarter page and decide. It's got a really cool cover, and you can pick it up to catch up and hopefully back issue 2 when it comes out.
And that's why I love asking questions, because I know when we were talking that you had that, and I didn't even realize that you could add on to a tier on the Kickstarter and stuff. How was that process for you? Because I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there's a sense of maybe ease a little bit more when you're in the midst of kickstarting a series that has been funded already probably twice, to then you're bringing a new property. You don't have the backing, so you don't have the support that you have your name, but like people aren't coming for Alpha Dogs, they're coming for something different now. So like, how was that process for you?
It's like starting all over again. Yeah. It really is. And Alpha Dogs was easier because everybody loves dogs, so it was a lot easier to get funded. Dinosaur Detective, it's you're taking my word for it that I have a great story, because why read something somebody never heard of when you can read Stephen King? So it was a much tougher sell, but the artwork was really cool. I showed a lot of pages, and it is a really fun. I write with the reader in mind. I like to jump right in the story. Like with Alpha Dogs, we jump right into the seemingly dead dog on the beach that heals. With Dinosaur Detective, we start out with this murder scene. This woman has been displayed in kind of a Christ-like pose hanging from a tree that this detective walks upon, and she's got a moonshine bottle stuck down her throat. And this serial killer is saying, hey, there's a connection, because her body is left hanging over the same burial grounds that the detective's father and uncle buried a bunch of bodies 40 years ago. So there's a connection there. Somebody's trying to get his attention, and as the story goes, we find out why. So it's a really terrific story. I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. If you like detective mysteries, if you like supernatural stories, then you'll really like Dinosaur Detective. So back it. It's 8-issue series. Hopefully you'll. I had a few people have backed it already off the Alpha Dogs one, so that was cool.
Nice. So I'm assuming then with this Alpha Dog, if someone hasn't picked up issues 1 and 2, there's a catch-up tier. I'm assuming that they can catch up and
precisely, yeah. If you missed it, you can buy the physical copies for $10 a piece. It's $20 tier for issue 1 and 2. And I made a kind of a deal for the PDF. You could get issue 1, 2, and 3 PDF for only $12. So I made it pretty cheap for people. I know times are tough, and I just want eyes on the comic because, you got to start somewhere. So
right. I love it. So if, in the midst of this interview, you're like, man, I got to check out Alpha Dogs. I want to check out Dinosaur Detective. Like, I'll have links in the description for the Kickstarter here to back it. John, anything else that you're working on that you want to promote right now before we wrap up?
No, not really. I just the 2 comics that pretty much taken up every moment of my time. I probably in hindsight would have made a little bit more of a gap, but that's just how it worked out, and that's fine. So, but yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and check out the Kickstarter. There's some awesome covers. I have an Empire Strikes Back homage cover because it's my all-time favorite movie, and then Wolverine is my all-time favorite comic book superhero, so I had to do an homage of Hulk 181, and then we got the regular cover. So there's 3 really great covers that people should check out, and it's you can see all 3 trailers. The trailers are kick-ass. They're awesome trailers. So yeah, check them out, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, you just did 2 Kickstarters in a row. Anything else you're working on? You're like, no.
Is that enough?
So, well, with that being said, gang, John, thanks you so much. Where can people follow along with you and what you're doing so they can keep track of, if you got stuff dropping?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. It's at alpha_dogs_comic. I'm on Twitter at Real Alpha Dogs, and I'm also on Facebook. Sweet. And if you Google Alpha Dogs, Jon Dexter comic, you're gonna get a whole lot of info about me and the trailers and stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, again, if you're watching the video on YouTube or you're listening to it via the podcast, the links to the description, everything John said, will be in the description of this video. Go check it out. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.